so you'll probably hear some noise in the background. Hopefully that will stop soon. So what I'm going to go through today is some Blender stuff, but also going into Godot, which might be relevant for those of you that are using Godot and want to import 3D models. Now, I've just made this rock very quickly, and it's got a normal map on it, and it would need a little bit more work on it, but I'm going to show you how to make this really, really simply. Currently, I can see there's no one watching this live, so one thing that you are going to get, you're going to get an email from school, you're going to get emails home, because you do need to be watching this stuff. You do need to be watching it later. And I can see on the channel, if I go to the YouTube channel, that you're not actually engaging with this thing, and I'm taking time to make them. So if I go to my videos, I can see that the level 2 ones, I'm not sure why you're not watching them. So I'm going to be sending emails home to let you know that, yeah, you do actually have to participate in this stuff. So in Blender, and this will be beneficial for the level 3s as well, so I'm going to reference them back to this video here. There's a really cool add-on, and I'm just going to start a new model here. You can delete that rock, and I'm going to go to Preferences, and you want to look up Extra Objects, Add Mesh, Extra Objects, and tick those two things. So Add Mesh, Extra Objects, Add Mesh, Add Curve, Extra Objects, and then there is Add Mesh Rock Generator. So this isn't cheating, it's part of it. I'm going to zoom down on here. And then when you add a rock, down the bottom here, you can add rocks, and you can change the scale. So I want the scale to be 5 there, 5 there. Ooh, I don't want that. So scale, change the scale of the rock and how it works. Change the scale of that rock there. So you can come up with a cool looking rock, and the deformation of it, how deformed it is, how rough the rock is, detail level, etc. Display detail, smooth factor, and so on. And there is a button, just tick this button that says use random seed. We'll keep clicking that until you find something that you're happy with. So I'm going to play around with, there we go. Okay, that rock looks pretty good. Now, once I've done something like this, and you can play around with the heaps, go over to the modifier properties. I'm just going to minimize all of these. These are what get added when we create them. And what I need to do is I need to add one more modifier called a decimate modifier. And I'm going to turn that down to about 0.25. In fact, I may even turn it down lower until it's, you see down here, it's lowering that try count. I want it really low. I want the try count to be under 1,000 for this rock. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to take it right down low. There we go. So that's 700, and it still looks pretty good here. Right click, shade smooth, and we're done. Okay, so that rock has got some sharp edges on it and so on. Now I need to apply the texture to it. I could go through and apply all these modifiers, and you want to do it from the top down. If you do it from the bottom up, it'll not work. And then apply that. All right, so I've got that. And there's the rock. It might be a bit too high poly in this case, but now I want to apply the texture to it. So I go to the materials down here. I'm going to add a new material to it. I'm going to call it rock texture. And then the base color here, I'm going to actually use a texture for. But let's just take a detour, because where do I get the textures? So this website here, 3dtextures.com, I've signed into it. I'm going to demonstrate making a wall in a minute using the same process. But I found a rock texture on here. The 3D scans are really good because the 3D scans have, in fact, I'll go to the rock texture that I got, and it's in here somewhere. The 3D scans have, Where's the rock one? Click on rock, it goes down to rock, data being loaded. It's taken a while. Anyway, I'll just go back to where I was. They have the albedo, which is like what it looks like. The displacement map, which I'm not actually going to use. I've been struggling to get this to work, but I kind of understand it, and the normal map. So we've got these two, and I can get these to work quite easily. You want to download the medium one. There's no point downloading the small one. You can get the medium one for free. I have been managing my assets. Okay, so I've got a folder here for Blender files where I'm saving my Blender files to. I've got a folder here for Godot files, and I've got a folder here for texture files. These TIF files that download, they're not going to work. Okay, you can't use them. Godot doesn't like them. So you're gonna have to just right click. You can just edit them in Paint and then go File, Save As, and just save it as a JPG instead. I've renamed mine so it doesn't have this really long file name here. I've just named it to what it is, Cliff. And this is for my rock texture. So if I go back to Blender now, in this base color bit, I'm going to change this. Oh, wait, my face is over that. So I'm going to just move that over to there. And this base color down here, I'm going to change it to image texture. And then I'm going to click on the open here, go to my image textures, texture files, and I want to use the albedo for that. Okay, it doesn't look like it's showing up. That is because I have to unwrap it. So it's going to be pretty easy unwrap here. We go UV editing at the top, and I'll select the Cliff albedo. And in this here, I'll just go U unwrap. That looks really bad. Change this to the viewport shading up here. Now that looks awful. Okay, that's not what I want. And I do not want to use Smart UV Project. Okay, Smart UV Project is not the way to do this because you'll get weird seams all over the place where it doesn't join up. Instead, what you have to do, I'm just going to reset that, is think about what the bottom of this rock might be. And I'm going to put it into edge mode, and I'm going to select these edges along the bottom. Just kind of one big, long, continuous seam. And I'm going to then right click and mark as seam. Now this is an easy way to do it. It's not the best way to do it. Then I'm going to click U unwrap. It's going to give me something like that, which I can scale up quite a bit. Okay, it'll look like this here. So that looks okay. It's good for what I want, but it's not really ideal yet. Okay, the next thing I need to do is I need to go down to here and the normal, and I'm going to click normal, and I'm going to click, or I'm pretty sure it's UV texture coordinates here. No, it's not. Which one is it? Which one is it? I'll just remove that. Normal, I think it might be just, no. I did this before. It's an image one, but I did it using the nodes. Let's see. Okay, I'll do it using nodes, which is up here, shading. And what I want to do is I want to add in, I actually just duplicated this one here, duplicate it. Whoops, not everything. Just this here. So I'll make this bigger and zoom in on it. So this Cliff albedo, which is I think a texture, I duplicated it and I changed it. So I open a new one and my normal, so that's the normal one, and I put the color into the normal. Now if I go back to layout now and change it to here, I can see that that's got the normal map on it. The lighting in here isn't great, it's not a problem, but I'm pretty much ready to export this now. So in Godot, I will just create a new project. Quit to project list, save and close. I don't want to save and close, I'll just quit to project list, don't save. And I'm going to make a new project. I'm going to make it in my proper place here, not there. Go Godot files. Get rid of that. And I'll call it Test Rock 2. You want to make sure that you test these things, create folder. So there's the project folder. And then to get from Blender to here is pretty easy. Export, hopefully, unless I've forgotten to do a step. This took me a while to sort out before. The best one to use is this GLTF 2.0. And I want to select the place I want to export it to, which should be Godot files, test rock 2. On the right hand side here, I want to include selected objects. Okay, I don't want to export the lights or anything like that. I do want to apply any modifiers that I may not have applied, and I want to export all that other stuff, so that's all good. And I'm going to give it a name. So this is going to be GLTF rock 1. Export this. Now in here, we've got this here. I bring it in. Oops. Oh, I need a 3D scene. And it actually looks like everything worked. The normal map has been applied. I've got this rock here. It looks kind of average at the moment. That's because I don't have a light source. So if I add in a directional light and then rotate that directional light, so it's kind of pointing down at an angle, and maybe if I rotate it that way as well, you can see how that normal map is applied to that rock. Now it's a fairly low poly rock. It's not fantastic. You can go ahead, and there's probably better ways to do this, but there's a decent rock straight into Godot. Okay, so if you're doing the 3D modeling one, this is more relevant for you now. If you're doing the game development one, you're probably working on a 2D thing, which is fine. You don't need to worry about this at the moment. Yeah, the wet look. Okay, so you have to edit the material for that, and you'll have to play around with the specular aspect of it. But it's depending on where the light is coming in, and it's roughness will you turn the roughness up, turn the specularity up. The specularity all the way up makes it look kind of wet. And if you turn the roughness down, it makes it look really wet. But if you turn that roughness up, it'll look less wet. So you have to kind of play around with those two settings there in the material that comes in. And I don't know why emission is on. Don't need that. Normal map is on. And you can play around with the scale of that normal map, turning it up and down to make it look more rocky and so on. Now the depth map, I'm pretty sure that this is the height map. However, it doesn't seem to come through with exporting from Blender. First of all, there is no depth option in here, and you can do it in shading, this displacement one here, by adding add a shader. I think it's displacement. You may have to input. It's somewhere in here. Displacement, just a displacement one, and taking the color from. If I duplicate this, not that. I'll try and actually add it and see if it works. I'm going to open, and I'll use the height one for this. So I want to take the color from there into there, and I want to take the displacement into there, and I want to take the normal into there. And then if I go and look up here, I'm not actually sure if it's done anything. It looks hideous underneath, but we're not worried about that for the time being. It looks like it has, so if I change, it's not really changing a whole lot there. I wonder if I use the color from the image. Object space, yeah. It kind of is changing it a little bit, but it's very subtle. When you make it in Blender, don't worry too much because you're going to change things in here. But if you change the specularity, the roughness, these options work the same as in Blender and in Godot as well. Okay, so that looks really kind of shiny and metallic there, but it also depends on the lighting that you use in Godot. So don't worry too much about how it looks in Blender because you want it to look good in here. And where did the light source go? So if I play around with that light source, Oops, that's not going to change anything, and that won't change anything, only the rotation will change stuff there. If I go ahead and add in a light, a point light, or an omni light, and I move this over to here, I should be able to, yeah, so I can play around with these lights, and depending on what I do with it, so if I change the light, make a red light instead, change the energy amount, if I turn that up more, so you can play around with these light settings here and get different effects, but that doesn't look as wet now. It does look wet when you're kind of moving around and looking at it in this view, but it looks a lot better than it did before. Now, making a wall is going to be very similar. I might end up running out of time with this, but I'll just demonstrate it. I'll download this one, and I'll download this one, and then I'll copy these to here, copy them into my texture files folder. Oops. I'll edit them in Paint. File, save as. This is going to be wall albedo. And the other one, which is the normal wall normal. And I'll go into Blender, create a new one here. Now for this wall, I'm just going to use a plane, add mesh plane. But I'm also going to use the displacement for this. Okay, I'm actually going to just wing this and see what I can do with it. Where is this here? I'll grab the displacement one, and I won't need to modify this, but I will anyway. So Control X, put that into here, and then edit that. File, save as, wall height. I think I did the other ones as TIFs, didn't I? I did, so I'll have to delete those and do them again because I'm an idiot. Edit, file, save as, JPG, wall, file, save as, wall normal. Make sure I select JPG there. You can use PNG as well. It's just there's no transparencies on these, so I don't need to. And going into Blender. So what I'm going to do first here is add a few subdivision surfaces, just simple ones, and I'll add probably 2 of them. Simple ones, subdivision surface like that. And then I'm going to add a displacement, which is going to be texture, new texture. I'll go into the textures, and it's going to be image or movie. I'm going to open this, and I'll go to my texture files. It's going to be the height map. Now that's not what I want. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do is go back up here and turn these subdivisions up more, like that. And then this strength is way too high. Okay, so I'm just going to do that there. Now what that's going to do is give me some of this, but as you can see, I got 131,000 tries. So when I add that decimate and turn it down quite a lot, you can see the number of tries going down. When I get that ratio down quite, right, ratio 1, that's a bit too low. 97,000. Let's go 0.05 and see what happens. That's still 6,000. I may need to just turn one of these down. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's like 1,000 there. Okay, there we go. So with this here, this is, I'm not too worried about how that looks. I'm just guessing here as to how to do it. But I've got 400 tries on that, so that's pretty good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my material. I'm going to add a new material. I'll call it wall texture. And once again, base color, I'm going to use as an image texture. I'm going to open that. It's going to be the albedo for the wall. And I can put it onto this preview. So I get that little preview there. I want to set this to shade smooth. And then I want to put the normal in. So I'm not sure what that texture is down there. So I'm going to go shading and duplicate this. Open the normal one, wall normal. Put that color into the normal map. And then that looks really shiny at the moment. But I'll play around with that in a sec. I haven't UV mapped it at all. That's one of the reasons why. So I may actually just delete that for now and go to the UV editing panel. And it's going to be pretty simple UV edit here. It's just going to be U unwrap the whole thing straight onto there. That looks right. What I may need to do, if I go back to there, and no, that's fine. Let's put it all on there. So if I go back into shading, this may not work. It may not work, but like I said, I'm just guessing here as to how this might work. Let's see, duplicate that, put that down there, select the, oops, I didn't mean to duplicate that. Select the normal from it, drag the color into the normal, and I'm just going to export this and play around with the settings in Godot. Export GLTF, make sure I should click this remember settings, only selected objects, I don't want the cameras, apply any modifiers that I haven't applied, and export it to the right place. The main thing you want to get from this is, and I'll just export it to there as well, is that managing files is really important in here. Making sure you're keeping track of where all your files are and not just on the desktop. Can be a folder on the desktop, that's fine. Maybe just dedicate a memory stick to it. This is going to be GLTF wall 1 in case it doesn't work. Export it. And then I'll bring that wall in. Okay, now this wall actually looks pretty good. Okay, it's got some depth to it from the baked or the applied texture map, but it's also got the normal map on it. So it's not just a flat wall with that normal map applied. It's a textured, not a textured wall. It's a modeled wall that I use that displacement map to make some changes to. So it doesn't actually look too bad. If you're coming at it from an angle, the normal map applies, but also, and I'll get rid of, I've accidentally put it inside the light, so I'll put it back here. I'm going to bring that directional light and rotate it a little bit. So as I rotate it, you'll see that, get that green one. As I rotate it, you'll see the light source changes on there. I'll get rid of this light here, delete node omni light, and that way it doesn't seem to be I'm not sure which way it's actually pointing. There we go. And I can light that up and down. So that would be one way of creating like a modular wall. Of course, you'd have to have some way to connect them together. These are seamless, so I could duplicate this. What's duplicate in here? There we go. And put it together like that. That's kind of not snapping. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, and make a bunch of walls like that. Of course, if you look back at yesterday when I talked about the grid, you should be making things that kind of align with a grid. But there's wall and rock and how to get them into Godot from there. If you're having any questions, please email them through. Because I'm not getting any questions at the moment, so I'm just kind of doing things that I think might be helpful for people in the class. If you guys that are doing the programming stuff have questions, because you're all doing something different, I'm not just going to say, oh, here's how to do a character controller, because most of you have already done trials and testing for that. what I would, with this kind of thing here, by the way, because it's modular, unless it's going to be flat, you'll see down here that I've got a gap in the wall because of how my displacement happened. I would probably make some kind of pillar to go on those joins, just or ensure that those joins are going to be flat when you do it in the Blender model. And that's pretty easy to do. I haven't actually applied any of these models, have I? No, I haven't. But if I was going to apply them, I would do this, and then in here I would just select those edges going down the side there. I'm not sure if I can actually do this without selecting everything. Okay, so I don't want that one selected. I don't want that one, I don't want that one selected. So I've selected all those edges, and I would select the ones on the other side, and then I would hit SY0, and that would scale them all to in a straight line. And that way they're guaranteed to line up on the other side. So that's not too bad. 400 tries for a wall that has some detail in it. It's not just flat. But you don't have to do it that way. There are other ways to do it. If you find videos online that cover this, feel free to do it that way. If you can figure out how to get the height map to work in Godot using Blender and exporting from there, let me know, because I had trouble figuring that out. I do know how to get it to work, but it's just a few extra steps. All right, I'm going to finish up here because I do need to get onto level 3 stuff in a minute. See you later.